The film look on digital is really popular, and it's for good reason. Film companies spent years and millions refining these colors to make them feel good. And there's a reason now, even on phone cameras, why a lot of times we judge the photos on how natural they are. And so modern digital, like Fuji cameras and their film profiles, are really popular. And one of the most popular is Classic Chrome. A few years ago, I did a classic negative profile that matched that in-camera Fuji look because it's only designed to work on files that you shoot on the compatible Fuji camera. That preset is still free in my Filmist free pack. I got a lot of call from users of Filmist for a Classic Chrome. Classic Chrome isn't actually based on a Fuji film, it's based on the old Kodachrome films. But the Classic Chrome that's in these cameras today, people love because it's soft and gentle and balanced. So today we're gonna make Classic Chrome as a preset, as a LUT, as a Capture One style, and we're gonna make it look amazing on any file. In order to do this, we're gonna need coffee, and we're gonna need to clean my windshield. Hola. ¿Cómo estás, chicos? ¿Qué dice? Necesito un café.
Claro que sí, caballero.
That's what I'm talking about, Jamaica and watermelon with a lime. Yes, please. I didn't actually get coffee. Let's spend the next couple weeks shooting, and then we're gonna make the best Classic Chrome preset ever. And we're gonna look at those baked in JPEGs versus the camera-specific developed settings that you get like in Capture One or in Lightroom, and we're gonna start working with sliders and adjustments and find out what it takes not just to make it look right on one photo, but on all of them. This is a common mistake people make. You have to think about how we blend yellows and greens and reds. A lot of times when people make adjustments and sliders, they think because we have a working profile on one photo that it's gonna work on all of them. But it's not. Subtlety of color is why I put so much work on Filmist. Even the free pack that includes things like Classic Negative, it needs to be perfect. If you have Filmist, you already have my new Classic Chrome. But if not, I'm still gonna show you how I got there and the general formula you need to make it work perfectly. Somebody's gonna run me over here, aren't they? They're just gonna run me over and no one's gonna care. I'm just gonna be lying in the road like, eh. Now I make LUTs of all the Filmist presets because these color profiles work great on lots of different type of video footage. And go to something like Resolve and I have all the Filmist LUTs right here, and I can go in here, let's actually just go ahead and put the Classic Chrome on these and start applying some of these LUTs here to my B-roll for the video we're doing right now. So being able to use all these color profiles across, it's more than just whether you have a Fuji camera, it's about everything. Okay, let's roll it and see how it looks. This isn't complicated. Well, okay, it's been about a month of tinkering and working with all this and trying to get it all dialed in. So it's been a little complicated. In fact, this is a pretty subtle formula, so to get it right requires dialing things in pretty well, and I did it right. I did a good job on this one, I think. You tell me. The main thing you're gonna see as you come in here is more differences in dynamic range than anything else. When I did the baked-in JPEG reference files shot on different cameras, mostly on my X100V, the beauty is when you're shooting RAW versus baking it on a JPEG, you have all this control as I'm about to show you. So you can apply a preset like Classic Chrome look, and then you can still have all that dynamic range. You can apply manual sliders. You can apply a chemical mix mod like Filmist, and I'll show you that as well. Look at these and tell me which one is Classic Negative. My reference files, I didn't put a lot of dynamic range. I kept everything kind of on neutral on the baked-in JPEG and then just locked it over to Classic Chrome. And if I switch this here, you can see that on the left here is the RAW and on the right is the JPEG. Another one right here, and I will let you look and see, and there we go. Let's do it again, and the left, again, is the RAW, and the right is the JPEG. Now, the beauty is we have our Classic Chrome here, and if you look up here, you can see our profile is still Adobe Standard, or if we're in Capture One, it's going to be Film Standard. So what I'm going to illustrate to you as we go along and I show you the formulas I used is that there's no camera-specific presets being used, and that's the key. I could take these files that were actually shot on a Fuji and just apply the camera-specific file, and it would be fine. It would give me that Classic Chrome look. I prefer to do things with a preset because I can see over here everything that's going on. But the beauty of this too is I can come in here and say, okay, I like my Classic Chrome, but I'm gonna do some manual shadow and highlight adjustment, for example. Or I'm just gonna come over here and do like one of the tonal range baths from Filmist to bring more dynamic range in, for example. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys the Capture One versions as well. I'm just gonna go through a few of these, and then I'm gonna show you the formulas for them, so that if you don't use my presets, but you want to tinker around and get a similar look, I'm going to give you close-ups of like the HSL settings and stuff I use. We have great tone. I'm not actually sure which one's which, so I'm going to turn on the image. Okay, the left on this one is the baked-in JPEG, and the right is the RAW. Okay, let's look at this one, and they do look very close. Even the dynamic range is very close. So the right is the baked-in JPEG, the left is our RAW file, but looking really good. If I go to survey mode, here's 3 variants. One of these is the RAW, one of them is the baked-in JPEG, and one of them is the RAW file processed with the camera-specific profile that is Classic Chrome from Fuji. But remember, the ultimate goal here is that we can do things like this. We can take and do a Classic Chrome preset and have a beautiful result on, what is this? A Canon file. All right, this is a 5D Mark II file. Here is out of camera, and here is Classic Chrome. And so you can see that even though this preset in a before after on a website might not look huge and night and day, but it's a very subtle, balanced formula that has nice subtle greens, that has good reds, that doesn't screw up flesh tones. It's just very, very balanced. Here is a Sony file. Let's go ahead and put the Classic Chrome on it. Okay, so we Classic Chrome, and now I'm gonna go up here and do like a dynamic range bath, or maybe even go to speed masks or something like that to bring some dynamic range in. So the cool thing here is not only can we use this on any camera, any RAW file, but we can also come in and have an instant Classic Chrome look process that we can manually tweak around and adjust to our own specifics at dynamic range. Whereas with a camera specific profile, sure, you can adjust sliders later, but you don't actually get to see what the camera specific profile is doing in terms of the sliders here on the screen. You only get to apply the profile and then adjust the sliders after. A Nikon RAW file, let's actually come in and run our Classic Chrome, and good color, just like really subtle, great details, little bit of grain being added in my version of the preset because most of my Filmist looks are trying to emulate film, but of course it's easy just to click and take away that grain if you're not a grain person. Let's come actually over into Capture One and just look, because I'm going to show you kind of how I formulated it in both, but you can see here we have these same RAW files right in here and the baked-in JPEGs, and we're getting very close results between those as well. Now, when I look at this on the JPEG versus this on the RAW, I'm seeing definitely a lift in the shadows, the way that I process this on the RAW file, whereas the baked-in JPEG give me a lot of bunching up in the blacks. It looks good, but I definitely you see some of this slight shifting. Even though our colors are very similar, there's slight differences in feel and texture. You can see with our Capture One Classic Chrome version, we're getting really clean results and it's coming out really good. Let me show you now how to do it, because obviously if you use my presets, you just use it. And I'm going to keep refining and updating just like I do all of these. But you might want to tinker with this yourself and make kind of your own version here. And I'm going to show you what I did both in Capture One and in Lightroom. If you went to a scene and took it on a Fuji camera and on a Canon camera and then applied Classic Chrome, are you going to get slight differences? Yes, because each of those cameras, the sensor and the way the RAW image comes through is different. Sony cameras lean one color shift, Canon cameras lean another, Nikon cameras lean another, Fuji's lean another. Most of those kind of variables can be resolved just by a simple nudge of the white balance slider to get the right balance if you're trying to do a matchup in a scene or something like that. We are in Capture One 22 right now, and you can see I have Filmist right up here. I've already applied Classic Chrome to this one here. So here's our raw and here's our Classic Chrome process, and it's looking good. Let's go into the actual color, because this is probably what you want to see most. You can see I'm using Film Standard on this particular raw file. The main settings you're going to see are in advanced color, and you can see my settings here in advanced color as I go through. This is what transforms the really nuanced subtleties. And actually, in Capture One, I'm able to do even a little bit more. It was a little bit easier, I think, to dial it in. Okay, now it's not only those color settings though, there's a little bit of color balance settings. So if you look at my three-way color, you can see my midtones are shifted a little bit yellow, right? My highlights a little bit orange yellow, and my shadows a little bit of the teal green. Very small shifts on these. Let me give you a look at my RGB and Luma curves, just to give you an idea. So this is more tone, except there is a little bit of red lift right down here in the low mid reds. And then the greens and blues are left alone on the color of these, okay? And then there's our RGB. And you can just kind of see how I've gone through different settings, exposure, shadow, highlight. These could vary a lot in terms of what exactly you were trying to do with tone, right? And you can also see that I did just a little bit of levels as well to just continue balancing the tone in the Capture One version. Okay, so we've got a very good looking Classic Chrome. Let's go back to the Lightroom version, and I'm going to just show you the similar settings that I used there to get my Classic Chrome dialed in Lightroom. So you can see I kind of have my tone, my basic settings up here. Let's go down to the tone curve though, because that's going to be important. So here we have our slider adjustments, which I did use for tone, and then combine those with the parametric adjustment here. A little bit of tone lift here, of the lower mids, and then a little fall off on those highlights to give me good balance. You can see just a touch of lift below middle gray on the reds, and just like in the Capture One, the greens and the blues channel are left alone. And now we come to the all-important HSL, and you can see here's our hue, the same data that we were looking at in Capture One, just in a different format, the saturation and the luminance values. And then let's go down to color grading, and you can see this is, again, a very similar tool to the way we're looking at, and you can see it's mostly the same as I did in Capture One, with a little bit of red-orange, a little bit of yellow on the highlights, and leaning toward the green on some of those shadows. Remember, this center dot, this is barely being moved, so these are very subtle adjustments. I did not use calibration for any of this. Calibration is a completely separate and independent from this particular look. So that gives you an inside look. I wanted to make sure I was being transparent, not just saying, hey, to get this look, you have to have my Filmist presets. If you guys want to support me, that's great. If you want to make this easy, if you want to try all the other films like the Portra and all those, or if you just want to go over to the site and download the free ones, which does include my Classic Negative, which is great. It also includes one of the Portras and a few other little things in the free sampler. But obviously, it takes me an immense amount of time to do these, and I do appreciate your support. But my point in all of this is you can go in here and tweak around and make kind of your own version, your own variant of this. And maybe it won't even be exactly like mine and Classic Chrome. It might just be something that really works for you. Don't be afraid to get in and play with those sliders. It's something I talk about a lot in my videos here and in my master workshops, like the sliders workshop and the super workflow workshop and things like that. I think a lot of times when people are making these kind of tools, they tend to come in and they overdo things. And this is something you see a lot in presets that are just sold by internet marketers. A preset should be something that's a very subtle and refined process that's tested. If I make this, I have to be able to come in here and say, here's Classic Chrome, here's Classic Negative, here is Portra 400, and be able to select these and control them and get beautiful results across lots of different images. And that's the key, is testing, because if I edit one image and say, oh no, this looks like Classic Chrome, this looks like Portra, and then send it out, you guys aren't going to be happy because it actually doesn't look like that on other images because there's other subtle nuances. And that means sometimes moving a slider by 1 point. It means sometimes nudging a curve up just a little bit. Yes, you could do this with color charts and kind of tweak around and try and dial it in. But I've found that the best way is to take images from different cameras, different lighting scenarios, and different scenes and subtly adjust those sliders. Even if I'm making a preset, like for silver, like for belladonna, like for power workflow, that's not trying to emulate a particular look or a film or an era, I'm still testing and doing subtleties with those. Please hit that like and subscribe button. I will link the free Filmus pack so you can check out some of the freebies. And of course, if you want to get the rest of Filmus, it does include the new Classic Chrome. I can't give everything away because I have to pay for all the time that I put into these and pay bills also. So while the Classic Negative is still free, the Classic Chrome at this point is part of the complete Filmus pack, which is one of the reasons I wanted to show you the formula so you could play around if you wanted to and kind of do your own thing with it as well. Fuji does make a really great camera and they tend to have great built-in color profiles. It's so that we can use them outside of that Fuji environment because we're not always shooting with those cameras. Sometimes we're shooting with mixed cameras. Sometimes we need to process in a similar way. And that's the goal here, is to make us all create better photos. Okay guys, hope you enjoyed this and we'll see you on the next one.